Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It has been some time. Unfortunately, I started a new job recently which has been taking up a lot of my free time, but when I saw IMSA was coming to Daytona for the last week of this season, I knew I had to get involved, and with the 499 being on the horizon, I decided I was going to dust off the old Cadillac GTP, one of my favourites just purely because of that lovely V8 sound, and get back to grips, as I'm hoping to run IMSA exclusively next season like I did with the LMP3. Now, as we're going to get underway, I'm towards the back. Didn't do too well in qualifying, so my plan is just to survive a lap one. See, everyone's bunched up already on the green flag. So I'm just going to try and stay as far to the inside here, make sure that I've got plenty of space to myself. Now I've got to watch out for these curves. As you can see there, I get a big hop and then I completely misjudged my braking. Thankfully not collecting that GTP that was in front of me, but I'm off. And as I rejoin here, I am stern last, so I've got a lot to make up here. But I know it's not over yet, as we know there's not going to be just me having these sort of incidents. And indeed ahead we've got cars off of smoke, rejoining hard, so I'm just going to try and stay to this inside. And we find ourselves now coming up with Sashi, and we're side by side into the braking zone, so I'm around the outside here. On these cold tyres it can be difficult to get the power down. As you can see, Sashi having a bit of a wiggle there. Be much better, but I'm now on the outside of the oval. I should have moved down a bit and taken some of those side rappies. I might have stood a chance of being ahead into the bus stop. I'm going to see, are they going to back out on the inside, or am I? And I choose to back out here, just choosing survival on this first lap after already going off once. So we'll have a look at what happened on lap one besides me going off. This was the Porsche that went off, and it's going to be difficult to see, but the cars behind them have a big moment and one of them locks up, and unfortunately this poor Porsche gets collected. And that's not the end of it there. As you can see, that Cadillac behind them just gives him an extra knock and sends him off for the second time, just for good measure. The GT3's had a big pile up, as we're going to see here. This McLaren, the white one, focusing on here. It's going to get a bit of a slide going on and collect McLaren behind him, and that just leads into a chain reaction as we've got cars being turned and hitting each other left, right and centre. McLaren seems to get away with it the least. Now a couple of laps later, just following Sashi through these opening laps, getting the car up to temperature. I was suffering damage from that 1X. We've got a GTP turned around, another one rejoining ahead, so looks like there's been yet another incident here which has gifted us a position. Now let's have a look here. We're following the green Porsche GTP, and he is there alongside him, but that red Porsche just turns in for the corner and unfortunately comes off the worst. They struggle with the rejoin there, but they manage it safely. Another lap later, and we're right up behind the two Porsches. We've got Heike, terribly pronouncing that, I believe, Finnish name, and Ek, the Porsche we saw go off in that incident earlier. Now he's likely carrying damage, so I'm going to assume it's between myself and Heike to get through without losing too much time. As we can see, Sashi is now up to P9 ahead of us, but is still only just 1.5 seconds. And there we goes, Heike makes a move down the inside, but connects with Ek as they go too deep. I can see these two are going to start fighting, so I'm going to back off and give some space. I don't want to get collected if they come together. See, they're still running side by side now onto the oval, so it's going to come down to the bus stop. Ek's damage might cost him in that straight line speed, so I'm going to try and follow Heike if I can through here. We pull to the left hand side, which, especially seeing that GT3 up ahead, I decide to back out and focus on my exit. And you can see that sort of work. They've both been slowed up, and even though there's a gap, I have to back out because I can see Ek coming across rapidly, which could have easily ended both of our races. That checkup has run right in behind us, so we are now 4 cars fighting into turn 1. Heike making moves left and right very aggressively. I'm just going to try and hold the inside here, but I'm going to be wary that Eck is carrying damage, so I might be slower here.
Clear right, on your right.
Don't want to go into the back of yet another GTP. And we stay to the left, we have a little bit of contact then. I catch the curb again, getting very lucky for the second time. But we come out ahead of the two other GTPs as they have their own little fight behind them now. Another lap later, just following Eck here. Seeing if I can get an opportunity to get past them. I felt good under braking, but then I can see the Eck braking either a little bit too early or me just misjudging it, and we get very lucky there to keep it on the track, but all that progress from the last few laps has now been lost. So it took another lap again, and we can see that Eck got passed by Brun and Heike has fallen behind us. I'm not sure if they were involved in another incident. And knowing Eck brakes early here, I try it down the inside just to try and create an opportunity. But they do very well there to continue around the outside and use that momentum to stay ahead. We're in the middle of GT3 traffic here, so I know that's not going to be the only opportunity. I'm just going to bide my time here. Especially whilst these GT3s are so bunched up still on these opening laps, as we're still only 9 laps into what is probably a 30-lap race. Cadillac was excellent at putting the power down coming onto the oval there. And even on the low downforce setting that VRS had made, this car felt fantastic. If I hadn't suffered that damage on lap 1, I felt I could have been a lot faster here, but I was just still going to make the most of it, that I was still in this race. See, I'm having to have a little confidence lift. That's the understeer I was talking about. The car's very aerodynamic damage sensitive, and anything on the front just causes so much understeer, which really affected me both in turn 1 and through the bus stop there, as you can see. But we are fast in a straight line. You can see here we're closing up on Eck. Going to have a look to the outside as he stays inside, and I'm not really trying for the move here, but I'm going to see if he might make a mistake. And I do get a lot of understeer though on the power, so he stays ahead here. Probably overdriving the car a little bit through this phase, just because now I'm starting to think I would like to get ahead of him before the pit stops, as that's a crucial phase here in these IMSA Open races.
Slower class car ahead.
Another thing I'm trying to get back into the rhythm with these cars is making sure that I'm fully off the power before I'm braking, because that's where I can use better regen, as the hybrid power is essential in these cars for a fast lap. Eck gets slowed up there by the GT3, but I'm not far enough to the inside to avoid him, so I get slowed up as well. This is keeping Heike behind us in contact, so if I make a mistake or if something happens between us, they are going to be there to capitalise on it. I'm using these laps just to build a profile of how Eck is driving. As you can see, I take an off track there, just turning in a bit too soon, but thankfully I avoid a slowdown which would completely lose all the progress I made in this race. And I can see now I'm going to get another opportunity on Eck here. So pulling out to the outside already, so I'm carrying a lot more momentum this time. We are fully side by side into the braking zone. I'm going to try and use as much of the track to maximise my momentum around the outside. I'm not ahead, but we are still there. So I'm going to get a good opportunity down the inside here into turn 4, I believe. The International Horseshoe, and we managed to make it work. I've got the GT3 BMW ahead of us, so I'm going to go round the outside, but he's drifted wide and that's caused a 4X, and that's thrown me off as well as I go deep, and we're off once again. Another mistake costing me all that effort I'd been making, and it would take quite a few laps to catch back up to these two. And by the time I did, Heike opts to going into the pits for the undercut on myself and Eck. And I brake a bit deep there, just about avoiding Eck in front of us.
Car number 12. You're approaching a group of slower class cars.
I did feel he was a little bit too slow through there, as I keep feeling he's braking very early and being slow into these corners. Get a bit close to that McLaren there and have a think, but I back out of sending it down the other side on the Mustang, which costs me some time but keeps us in the race. And then we have a back marker behind us, Brewer, who was involved in that incident with the Porsche GTP on the first lap, coming up behind us very closely there, which did get me a bit concerned.
Coming up on a slower class car.
Still staying in touch with Eck here, and I know that at least with this free air now I can make up the ground, and I'm just gonna have to try and do that until I can get the next opportunity to get past them. You can see they're going to get slowed up here through the bus stop by yet another GT3, so maximise the exit beyond that power, and it's worked out nicely there. As you can see, I've slowed up quite a bit and we've got all this momentum, so we're going to take the high line.
He's still there.
I should have really come down here and used some of that side draft. I was finding it difficult to see even by looking left with that A-pillar. So it'll be the third time now round the outside, and we are head under the braking, but I've got this McLaren ahead of me. So I've got a time trying to get to the right and then give them plenty of space. You can see they're already carrying damage there. That's put us ahead into the International Horseshoe. And most importantly, ahead before we're going to go into the pits at the end of this lap. We're coming into the pits here and I get greeted by a strange sight. I can see a GTP ahead of us, side on. So something's gone on there. I'm adjusting my crew chief settings as well now, so I'm much closer to what you can see there is required on the eye overlay statistics. As see GT3 backing up, he must have really missed his pit box. So have a look at what happened to this poor GTP here. They've entered the pits completely fine, but they've got that GT3 next to them, and yeah, not a lot of people seem to know that the Daytona pit entry is collision on until you're into the actual pit box. So this poor guy loses a lot of time there. So quite a few laps later I had a very quiet out lap and quite a few laps just under my own pace, putting in the laps, trying to catch up to P7, car number 38, Sartor, who we saw earlier in the race, who've been doing really well considering that they're a 2.5k driver in what is second split here. So there are some fast GTP drivers here.
Slower cars ahead.
I know myself, I'm very rusty when it comes to driving these things. There's a lot of intricacies both with the hybrid system and the aero on these. But at least by having driven a lot of LMP3 and LMP2, it's not too difficult for me to adjust back to it. So we can see Sartor ahead coming into LMP2 and that GT3 traffic. The GT3 opts very safe there to stay to the outside. And we're just watching to see what happens between them as he makes a very optimistic move down the inside of that LMP2, which doesn't work out for him. So I compromise myself a bit, but we get a position avoiding Sartor's rejoin there.
Nice pass. Left side.
So there's kind of silly moves that I do come to expect out of some people, and unfortunately everything nice I said about Sartor there had just been undone by making that sort of move rather than being patient. As the LMP2s are very fast around here, as you can see in the standings, their top times are not that far off the GTPs. And there's another incident behind us in the mirror. That poor LMP2 got knocked by Sartor into the tyre barrier in turn 1. And well, I've muted the voice chat for good reasons here, as they were not very happy. Rightfully so though, in my opinion. All that has brought us back up closer to Brun ahead, who we were racing earlier, who is up into P6. Now P5 is quite a bit further up the road here, so a few laps later
laps of fuel
We've still just been following Brun this entire time. They are quite fast, but we seem to be equal on pace. But they have caught up to some backmarker GTPs, which has slowed them up a little bit. So the best I can hope for here is P6, as we saw a GTP backmarker that was off there through another incident. And I'm coming down very close on fuel here. Another incident there, GTP off, and they're rejoining. And I've got to be very strict and stay to the inside there, really slowing up to avoid that terrible rejoin. Now see, this is who we were racing earlier, and they're down the inside. And well, I did review that incident a few times myself, and they were relatively clear in the middle, but that does not excuse the rejoin. The GT3 turned in towards the apex whilst they were alongside, so it wasn't really their fault, but that rejoin was so dangerous there, it could have ended both our races. Now, rejoining, we are still right behind Brun, who's had a bit of a slow there by that GT3 through the bus stop. It's been giving us great opportunities this entire race, and we are now firmly in his slipstream coming into turn 1. Let's see what they're doing, and surprisingly they opt to take the outside here, so I'm going to dive down the inside and carry my speed as best as possible whilst staying towards the apex, get on the power, which has been really easy to do in this Cadillac, and we are ahead to put us up into P5 along with that freebie earlier from Sashi going off. And we're white flag conditions now, so I just need to hold it for the rest of this lap. I am mindful we are going to be coming down to potentially the point where the car might start coughing on me with this fuel. There are some lapped traffic ahead of us along with a GTP. I'm just going to hope I do not lose any time to them, as we have Brun right behind us, so he might be able to return the favour as we come onto the oval. But we do really well to get the power down, and we are now 7 tenths ahead. It's important that I get past that GT3 traffic before the bus stop, and I've got now the LMP2 in front of us, and we see the fireworks signalling that P1 has already finished. I'm going to prioritise my exit, get on the power, but I'm just understeering too wide and had to let off to avoid going into the back of that MP2. Just cost us a few tenths to Brun behind us, and I feared it might have had better momentum. I'll take as much of that slipstream from the LMP2s as possible, and it looks like I managed to equalise it as Brun has not caught up to us, and we're going to cross the line there in P5. A fantastic comeback considering all the mistakes I'd made. But it was a good return to form here at IMSA, and I'm hoping to run this series a lot more next season, especially with the 499 being added, which I will do a review on once it's in, and I will certainly be uploading a lot more of these videos on IMSA in the future. So if that's of interest to you, please like and subscribe, as that really helps me as well here on the channel, and I will see you next time.